kind of models after him. Where it takes him.
Yeah, apparently he
Oh.
takes a bunch of
Jeez.
courses
Shit.
that he did.
See that moving to Oklahoma, whereas Nebraska and Oklahoma used to be so competitive in football when there was no conference. I thought I can't move to Oklahoma. I'm a Nebraska fan. That won't work.
I know where today
These days,
ethics
they're not the
stuff.
same conference.
Mhm.
But I
It's not right for everybody.
yeah, he's a quarter big difference. It really does.
Oh, and I don't know,
Man.
so I don't follow football very well, so I don't know like the terminology, but whoever he throws some ball, they have good hands. They're good catchers.
Stu,
I don't know. I just know that,
catch the ball.
yeah, the people that are catching the ball,
Well,
they're good.
You want to know something about catching the ball? Here's my philosophy. Okay, I can't catch the ball to save my life, but there's only two reasons why I can't. Because my mind is like, you got to focus in on that ball, and you got to just
right.
like look at the everything. And I don't have a good focus, and my mind's. I think you got to be able to focus.
Yep. Whoever, I can't remember who the Chiefs were playing like 2 weeks ago. but
All right.
They could not catch. I was like, what are you doing? You
I'm a big Chiefs fan.
Yes, my boyfriend, he's a huge Chiefs fan, so we watch the game like every Sunday, but
I was a Chiefs fan before they were even in the NFL. They used to be in the AFL, actually, in the '60s.
So, last time we started talking about ethics, yes. We just curse swirly kind of started.
Ethics.
Yeah. That's over. All right.
It's been a week since.
Yeah. All right. We moving some ethics stuff. I know that we were talking about it a little bit. Now you guys doing some stuff with numbers and some sensitive topics, right? And so,
Ethic consideration, Hawthorne effects. What I got.
cool. And so, anytime we're doing anything, we have an effect. That's why I started with Hawthorne, because just the act of looking changes things. It's one of those things that whenever you see that, that's always an indication that there's something more going on there than usually what we'd like to admit. And so in this area, we're going to go into ethics. And so ethics itself is often referred to as a thing that people only have when no one's watching. Right? Yeah, because that's the only point when you're actually free to do anything you want without fear of some type of reprisal, something coming back at you. And so you could see better measures for what I guess is ethical or isn't under the cover of darkness. And so you can see where we've made some missteps over time. We can also see the value in the knowledge that's generated, because some of that knowledge is more valuable than gold. Knowledge itself, most of it has some very, very, very dark roots, right? If we start dealing with numbers, well, you have everything associated with the good side of humanity, productivity, life, food, that kind of stuff. And everything's associated with the negative side, that would be war, right? That's the other way numbers are used a lot. So keep that in mind. Anytime that you're dealing with the stuff, there are positives and negatives in both directions at any point. When we were dealing with the people that we were dealing with last time, we had those who were missing. And what else were we dealing with? What other group?
Found or not found, not wanting to be found.
Yeah.
Not found.
We had
How
the
do you put that?
that one we went with we'll just say Soren.
Oh, you're talking, that's that
Yeah.
registration for.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't want to be found, but they have to be found. You know, they've got that desire, but they have to.
Yeah.
And so that's what you start dealing with. And yeah, so on the two ends, it's here's the people we've lost. We don't have any idea where we're at. We value. These are the people we track because we don't like them, I guess, or that we realize that they represent danger.
Well, they're a threat to public safety,
Yeah.
basically.
What also do they represent? When you access that information, we did it in class, there was a specific little little box you have to click into to say, yes, disclaimers, right? that you won't use this information for negative kind of stuff, that kind of thing. Because some people might be like, okay, I know so-and-so, they're gonna be on this list. I can find out where they're at. I'm gonna go get them. Right? Huge danger, huge danger. As we deal with ethics in this, from like probably the biggest, widest initial consideration, yeah, the topics in general, and then maybe the populations. And this thing will tell you something about some populations are called special populations or protected populations. Those would be like your children, your prisoners, things of that nature, where they've been identified, or there's like prisoners that have been identified in a context where they're very much native, confined. And so as you're dealing with special populations, there are special things to consider. For example, like with this group, it's, you know, what that information is and how people can use it. For like prisoners, are they going to give you the information you want? That's the first question, like for this class. But from the ethics side is why, you know, what's going on with their personal situations when they get involved with research, right? Do they actually have a choice? Well, good time's a thing. Right? If I'm extra compliant, I get, hey, if I do this, maybe they'll look at that as good behavior. Ooh, right there. So that's some of the stuff you start running into quick. So different populations have different issues. Some of them are very specializing. You have to be cognizant of that fact if you're going to deal with them. Some topics are that same way. Some of that you'll get in theory or the way that people approach it. Some of it you'll get over here in the measurement side, right? Trying to think of one example I had very good. Some terms are loaded terms. We talked about that already when I said work welfare, right? So as you deal with those types of things, you have to know not only, you know, what it is, what the biases are, what problems go with it, but also, you know, populations that might affect that kind of stuff to some degree, but really how other people are going to perceive it when they read it too. So those are all factors you have to kind of consider simultaneously. Let's see, ethics stuff. Let's see where they start. Right and wrong. Ethics is a judgment of things that are right and wrong. Not easy to do. Simplistic. Overly simplistic, right? Because anytime you deal with stuff like this, whether you're dealing with right or wrong or racism or any concept, by the time that you condensed something that's got as many different directions that things move and as many different topics that it's touching, by the time that you've reduced it to where it's just one issue, right versus wrong, and it's we want to go one direction, you've really reduced down what thing is that we're dealing with. So to have it aligned so well to be able to do it correctly is not easy.
Yeah, but right and wrong is, it's a societal, it's a cultural thing. It's like cannibalism is perfectly okay some places, but in
Yes.
other places it isn't.
Yeah, so that's one of the problems we have in our field.
Yeah.
That's where you start getting
Cannibalism.
into, yeah, that's where theory comes back in. It's like, some of those conversations I don't like to have. What's it, post-structural, all that kind of stuff. It's like the heady conversations of how we want to put this all together, how we view that it fits. Is there a real right and wrong? Some say yes, some say no. Well, depends. That's not most questions for this class. What's the answer? It depends. Because if you say that, what happens is you just say there's a structure probably, and it's going to rely on multiple other things. So if you just say it depends, good answer, right? So you're collapsing stuff down to try to understand it in terms of right and wrong, and realize that other people are going to view things differently.
Does that have anything to do with laws too?
To some degree, laws do the same
Laws
thing.
are kind of right.
Mhm. Laws do the same thing, but different process. And that's why in criminal law, I talk about the structure of it so much, because it does the same thing. It's just different body of work kind of stuff. Here, the way that we do it is we start doing the cultural stuff and then the effects that it has and that kind of stuff. So if you want to talk about, realistic right and wrong, of course they exist. They exist in the effects that are produced. Are they good or bad, right? But that's much more complex. Let's see. what people agree is right and wrong. And the legal side, what they do is you have the whole voting system, you have representation, they go in and they propose changes, and they either vote on themselves or pass the vote on to you all. And so there's that system here. Here, what we do is we'll go out and ask people individually or for data that addresses whatever it is that we're trying to deal with. And then we start dealing with the interactions of things to see whether it's working or not, if people's opinions are right or wrong, if there's any relationship between this and whatever's functioning, that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of things you can do. Let's see. It is subjective to some degree, though. Always is, right? That's like justifiable homicide. Homicide's a bad thing. I'm okay with it in certain circumstances, right? Why might you not recognize your own work? That's actually a bigger conversation. My favorite phrase for this kind of stuff. And you see your own eyeball. No, you see with it, right? And so what you have to do is you have to have some other perspective come in there, kind of thing.
Well, in the mirror you can.
Yeah.
It's all backwards.
Yeah, you have to have some other kind of perspective. You're looking at yourself, you're probably gonna see things backwards. Yes. If you're asking somebody else, maybe they'll be able to give you the right information so long as they're not doing the same thing. Right? And so that's how we actually did it. We asked a whole bunch of people or whatever, a number of people, and then we look to see how much alignment is there. When we start looking at some of these subjects, some of these things that were done, you'll see it's like, oh yeah, no matter who's looking at it, this does not look good. Some of it has significant value, depending on how you look at it. As a question should involve weighing benefits against potential harms. That's actually how we justify it. All research carries with it some potential for harm, at least in terms of misuse. Look at the atom bomb. Right? We have nuclear energy, we get a bomb. And what we have here, let's take that. You got a list of people who have committed some egregious form of crime. How easy is that list to be turned weaponized against them? Very. You're asking people about their experiences, that kind of thing. If you're asking about anything traumatic, how likely is it that you're going to cause some type of stress or anxiety? Right? So to be able to do that to somebody, you need to have some type of justification to balance it out. Otherwise, you're just being cruel. There's no point. You're just doing it just to ask. There has to be a point to it. Okay. Voluntary participation. How it conflicts with generalizability. Okay. Voluntary. We want everybody to be voluntary. We want them to know what they're doing to some degree. But at the same time, we have that Hawthorne effect. So deception is sometimes allowed. I won't tell you exactly what I'm looking for, because if I do, you might change. Okay. But now, since you're the one choosing who's in here, it doesn't matter what exactly I'm trying to do in terms of sampling procedures. I want to make this group resemble this bigger thing I'm trying to understand. Well, if they're all in here voluntary, that's going to shift it around some, because everybody I asked was based off of this group. So self-selection starts becoming an issue too. Okay, special ethics research questions. We'll get into some of those. Informed consent, anonymity, confidentiality. Those are other issues. Prisoners, juveniles, we talked about that. Belmont report we'll get to. IRBs we'll get to. Okay. We need to know this general shared conception among criminal justice researchers. That's basically saying they don't know what this is. Look at that last bullet. We need to know of this term, because we don't. What is it to be ethical? It's not something that we get very easily. Why I like the phrase, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Shows a bit of the nature of humanity, because both of those times are right now. Right? They're also the same way whenever it was written. Right? Dilemma, balancing benefits against harm. That's the dilemma here. And we're doing it at scale. This is literally the needs of the many versus the needs of the few. And some things aren't going to be positive. And so we have to measure them. Okay.
What's the dilemma?
The dilemma?
Yeah.
How
because-
much harm you introduce. Yeah, let's go with a good one. We were talking about lawsuits in the last class a little bit,
Oh.
right? The role of money,
Mhm.
right?
Well, let's say it's okay, balancing the potential benefits. Is that like just not saying anything?
Benefits would be more like all of the potential
Like
ways.
the truth can hurt. The truth hurts. Or
Everything hurts. It's more like it. It's more like
You may
everything.
say, not to some kind of research that shows that, you know,
No, it's just,
this is the truth.
yeah,
but
it's
people
literally that
don't
everything
like it
hurts.
or they don't understand it.
yeah,
so.
and well, that's why I use that phrase, that duality. It's,
Mhm.
it's no matter what you do, it's gonna do both because we're dealing with stuff that's scale.
Exactly.
It's going to do both. That's why I talked about, and I didn't get to this point in the last, because we're talking about lawsuits in policing. It's like, there's a whole bunch, most of them are unsuccessful. There's a very few that make huge amounts of money. What ends up happening when you give someone who's got troubles a huge amount of money? It can either be really, really good or really, really bad. The one I like to, when in that class, the one I bring up is Shirley Rodney King, because he's the best example of that. 1990s, something awful occurred. Right? He, a victim, in a very bad way, to police encounter. Right? It was videotaped and broadcast to the world. That's infuriating to everyone. We had major riots in '94, and
Connection issues, maybe.
the officers, when they were put on, I can't remember if they were put on trial, they were just making they had a kind of a proceeding to determine whether or not they'd make charges. I can't remember if they charged them or if they were acquitted.
What case was that? They charged you. They charged.
And so they were acquitted.
You know.
Yeah, well, that's actually coming through.
Oh.
Yeah, that's you. And so, yeah, that's exactly, the case.
Yeah, they charged them twice, actually.
Mhm.
They charged them state and then they got off.
Mhm.
Then they charged them federally, and I'm not really sure what
I
happened.
can't remember if they got off federal. I know they got off the state level, and that's whenever the riots kicked off.
Mhm.
Okay. And so what ends up happening is you end up, okay, we've got this social problem. We're trying to move over to the positive. Police beatings are not good. What ends up happening? Riots. That's also really bad. How many people died in those? That's really bad, right? I mean, there was one instance where on video, a helicopter caught I think it was one or two people pulling a truck driver out of the cab of his truck and smashing his brain with a brick.
Well, I don't want to get into that too much, but those people that did that got off.
Yeah, they got off too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's balancing that scale, because it's all
Yeah.
crap. Yeah, and that's what it is. You're dealing with the bad behaviors, the bad situations. And so what ends up happening is, depending on what story you want to tell yourself, what perspective you want to take, try to do this. I mean, it moved in a positive direction. It did. If you look at the people involved in it, what even happened to Rodney King? He got his millions, had a nice lavish life for a very short period of time, number of years, yeah. Ended up overdosing and drowning in his own pool. Got problems, right? Those problems were not addressed. Other problems were. And so depending on what we're focused in on, determines what we see to some degree. What is the benefit here? What's the harm? You have to weigh them both across multiple things. That's what we're doing. Okay. Here it mentions active criminal, possible violence. Yeah, if you're gonna go study criminals. Yeah. Here's an example. I want to study some prisoners. I want to go and interview them, and I want to ask them about their experiences with snuggling in prison. Okay. Ooh, that sounds dangerous right off the get-go. What kind of questions are you gonna ask? Well, I want to ask them about the times that they've gone and raped other people. Okay, so you want to get stabbed, huh? Right? Oh no, you just want to ask about how they've been victim. Yeah, you want to get stabbed, right? That's how you get shanked. That kind of a thing. It's like, oh, depending on how you do it, you can get in there and do those types of questions. But if that's the initial level of thought you're going in, it's like, ooh, danger abound. Right? Psychological harm of remembrance, unpleasant traumatic experience. It's called secondary trauma. That's the term there. Anytime you think about that, what is it? Brady said it. If you got old memories, usually what they say is those memories, if they pop up regularly, there's something there that you need to understand about it that you haven't. Every time you think about it, what happens to your blood pressure, your heart rate, that kind of stuff.
Is that like PTSD?
That's exactly what it is. It's just on a very, very individual experience kind of base level, right? You can see it in officers' critical incidences, right? you have that critical incident. It's like, yeah, they knew what they were going into to some degree, so they were actually prepared for it, small degree. But still, how much of an effect does that still have? It's a big. Possibility of harm may be justified for potential benefit of study, but it's still arbitrary. Yeah, that's something that what we have to do there is we have to do it like what we do everything else. And we have to hand off what we want to do. A whole bunch of other people to look at it and say, hey, is this okay? I don't remember that one, drug use in dance clubs. There's a few in here that they'll talk about, but there's some I'll show you that aren't in them too. Yeah, I'm trying to remember which one that one is. There's a whole bunch of examples of research that's got some really good use, but the way it was conducted, it was either dangerous, harmful, or other things. This one probably has to do with you're talking drug use. It's probably facilitating drug use is what it is, and so you're actually making the problem worse. It's sort of like if you're going to add in a monetary incentive for completing something, right? That money you get if you're dealing with some topic that's criminal in nature, realize you just gave money to a criminal. That's what you did. You just funded a criminal. Good job. Sometimes we need to, though. Now, how do you balance that? I'm trying to remember. I don't remember that one. There's a couple that we'll talk about. I know it'll mention, first we'll mention Stanford. It may mention Milgram, but won't. I've got this pulled up, so I'll show it to you. There's a couple others.
So what were they, what about the Stanford one? They were thinking they should. That was an ethics dilemma. Is that what you're saying?
That was one created by the guy who studied. He is unethical, is what it is.
Yeah, because I know the people kind of took the role of the.
Yeah, no, that guy was in love with power. He loves his own evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you read the study, I might skip ahead of that since we're.
That's about where some of them were guards and some of them were prisoners. And,
yes.
Yeah.
And so here's going to talk about the participation in anonymity. We'll come back to that in a second,
Yeah.
but we'll see where they got this in here.
Interesting. I thought.
They have it in here. If not, there we go. That's where they started. So this is the other one. They talk about trouble in the tea room. So basically what this one was the 1970s, if I remember correctly. So you have to think about homosexuality in the 1970s. It's not something that's going to be possible to live on in the 90s. They killed somebody for it, just for being homosexual, right? This is 20 years early. It's not going to be better. It's going to be much worse. In terms of what they would do is researchers came in and they pretended to be, it says watch queens. So these are people who are going in public restrooms and parks and having sex, homosexual sex. And so what they did is, okay, I'm going to be a lookout for you. While I'm looking out for you, I'm going to be recording everything that you're kind of doing to some degree. So much so as to include your license plate on your vehicle when you leave. And then I'm going to run that in the system and figure out who you are. I'm going to go visit you in your home and interview you. Yeah, that's a huge issue right there, right? What have you just done? No, number, license plates, track down the names, conduct a survey. You get that. That's a big no-no. Because what in types of dangers did you just introduce into their lives? Yes, they're doing something that is socially unacceptable for the time. It's not necessarily criminal. Could have been actually, depending on where that was at, though. You have to look back at the statutes there because we criminalize that behavior. And then there you go. You've now potentially destroyed their entire lives.
Yeah, the right to privacy too.
Yeah. Yeah, what did you just do? You were curious about something, so you destroyed everyone's lives who you were involved with. Yay, good for you.
Really.
Yeah, it's your value of the value that puts the knowledge that you wanted to acquire was so high that you risked everyone involved. That, okay? Stanford prison experiments even worse. Prisons are brutal, dehumanizing because people in them, that's the hypothesis, situational hypothesis, creates brutal, dehumanizing conditions independent. Zimbardo's a guy. Sought to test situational hypothesis by simulating prison in the 1970s. What they did is they took their own students, criminal justice students. Half of you are in this group are going to go and become prisoners in the basement. The other half of you are guards, right? As things started to take off, torture, okay? I don't have to let you sleep. I don't have to leave you alone. Some of the stuff that was included in the treatment there, and realize these are just college students mistreating each other. And the ones that are locked in the room, really locked in the room. I mean, they could leave at any point in time, but they're bound to this thing. And when you get into it, how many people don't realize that they can leave when they're in violent situations, right? Just think about those domestics again. Same kind of situation, same kind of mindset comes up. So you have these people who are kind of locked in these positions. You have those who are torturing them. Some of the stuff that they're doing is including things like, I'm going to grab the fire extinguisher in the middle of the night, come in there and just start spraying you with it, right? The guy who's running the study, that Zimbardo guy, he's not actually in any way impartial in this thing. He's encouraging the violence the entire time. He loved the power. You read it, that's what you get. Like, yeah, this guy. Ooh. What do you get for it? Power. 25. Healthy. $15 a day. Heck, that's the 1970s money. Asked to sign a contract, they be confined, put under constant surveillance, have civil rights suspended, not be subject to physical abuse. That was wrong. It was terminated after 6 days. So only 6 days. They had people breaking down mentally, crying, suffering, major PTSD for the stuff that's gone on there. If you got a bunch of people who've never seen pure malevolence and you give it to them, what are you going to get? Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, when you start talking about malevolence, most people don't realize how bad it can be. It's like, oh, I won't go into that one just yet. Subjects displayed unexpectedly intense reactions. Yes. 5 had to be released because acute depression and anxiety. Guards became aggressive. Prisoners became passive. Learned helplessness. Okay, so they talked about that one there. It's the next one they talked about. Sensitive to ethical issues. We'll come back to that in a second. Then we'll talk about this one. Let's see here. That's going to be over here. It's going to be my email. And we'll go over here.
Is there any real ethical way to do anything like that?
You could, but what you'd want to, I share the right screen.
Because if you tell people what you're doing, they're probably going to change their behavior.
Yeah. Well, the thing is no, that is the right screen. Okay. You know, we run prisons all the time. We'll always have problems with people getting in there for the power that holds. You have the power to control people. Same thing in policing, same thing in courts. It's all over the place. That's just people. You could do it, but you need to have considerable oversight, and you'd want to make sure that the way that you're running it doesn't encourage it. And you wouldn't want to, you really wouldn't want to even run a study like this one, really, to be honest, because the opportunities there for real harm is way too high. Yeah, this one would be really, really difficult to run. What I was going to say about like prison guards and stuff like that, it's like, you want to know what malevolence is, and whether or not it's positive or negative. Sometimes it can be positive. It's like, this is where things get really messed up, right, in our field. Dealing with the prisoner. Prisoners had some type of behavioral issue. How do you respond? Right? Depending on how you respond to it, it's going to determine how that person interacts with you from now on. Right? And as word gets out, that's going to influence everyone else. Right? What kind of response do I want to give? Do I want to give a response that's the tamest I can give, the hardest I can give, or aligns to everything else? But it all depends on how you want to be seen relative to everyone other guard there. My favorite one I ever heard, because it was so horrible, was it was involving a guard had keys taken from by a prisoner. Grabbed the keys, went to the back of the cell. Give me my keys. No, give me my keys right now. Look you. All right, go get the spray. It's gonna be the OC spray, the strong stuff. And then they doused them. They got the keys back as soon as they start talking about spray, but it's too late. They went ahead and sprayed them anyway, right? Because you got to make that message go across. Because otherwise, if they realize they can do stuff and there's no punishments at all, didn't have that problem in society. So we had that. Okay, so they sprayed him all up in his face. You know what happens next? If you're gonna try to wash that stuff out, that stuff hurts. Where's your water source? If you're in a cell, where's your water source? The one water source you'll have that's got a large amount of water.
All right.
In a jail cell.
Oh.
Toilet. Yeah, it's a prison cell actually. Yeah, it's a toilet. So it starts flashing in the face.
Okay.
Right? And so by this point in time, the guards present there are laughing uncontrollably. play stupid games, get stupid prizes. It gets better from there. Because as you wash it off, what ends up happening is that fluid mixing with water, you're not really diluting it that much because it's that strong. What happens is you spread it over the rest of your body. The next thing that they started laughing about was the fact that it hit his genitals and he started doggy paddling backwards in the toilet. You're starting to understand malevolence now. They're enjoying that. That's pure cruelty. And we call it good. Now we know something. Cool. Same kind of concept here. Let's see. This is their, oh, you paid. Yeah, that's an ad. They've got a trailer for it. So this person, yeah, capitalizing off of it. What happens when you put good people in evil places?
You think a lot of that has to do with when people get into groups, like if there's a group of guards against one prisoner,
Yeah.
it's like power. I don't know. It just people get egged on by other people, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like
There's a lot of studies about that, about
Yes.
compliance and that kind of thing.
because when you're by yourself, you wouldn't probably do anything, but when you're with a bunch of other people, you might riot. You know, you might do.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I forget what class I was in. We were talking about what was it? It was entrapment. It's kind of the same kind of concept right there. Entrapment. Get enough people around you to do something.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. What it is most people, it's bystander effect is really what it is. Most people, so long as it's not pointed directly at them individually, they won't do anything, or if there's enough people there to guard them from that individual call out, it never happens. Right? So people don't stand. Some people stand no matter what. Like, I ain't moving. That kind of thing. Some people will do something evil and look to capitalize off it. I'm not a fan of this guy just because of what he did. Is that who he is as a person?
Is it the
No.
Stanford guy that you're
Yeah,
talking about?
that's him right here. He's gonna look at this. He's gonna. Oh, that's not. I wanted to get that off there. Yeah, there you go.
He looks evil.
Yes, he does.
Got that
Yeah.
weird thing going on.
Yeah, he's got a mustache. That's definitely evil. So this is the Milgram experiment. I'll download it so that way we can open it up a little bit bigger. So this is the one you need to know. This is the one I think I started talking about it last time. So this study is a little bit different. So this one's 60 supposed to be 63. So we realize we're only what 15 years post-war kind of thing. About 20, quite. But not very long. Had all those issues with people following orders, right? Was it Harry Potter where they had? Yeah, it was Harry Potter. There's a scene where a guy, the one with the weird eye, he used to hunt down the bad people, right? He's talking about. Okay, there's a lot of people who said they only did so and so's bidding because they were under the effects of some spell that made them compliant. How can you tell out the ones who are being honest from the liars? Right? That's this thing right here. You want to know what it is? Here's what they did. There's researcher. There's researcher. And then there's subject. Subject thinks this person is the subject. This is the guy running the thing. Okay? I've brought you in. What's going to happen here is we're testing this guy over here. Every time he gets a wrong answer, electric shock, 1 degree higher for each additional wrong question. Right? This person is unaware of the fact that they are the subject here. Otherwise, they would change their behaviors. They think it's over here. That's why Hawthorne effect is so important. You have them looking one way, make a small change somewhere else.
Did you ever see the movie Ghostbusters?
Which one?
The first one,
Mm-hmm.
when he was trying to get a date basically with the girl, so he shocked the guy all the time.
Yeah.
That's what I always laugh when I
Yeah.
think of that, because I think of that movie when I think about people getting shocked.
Yeah. Well, it always makes me think of
The
junior
ESP.
high and high school. It's like, the whole, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. What's that over there? And then, that thing over there where it's like, yeah, as soon as you know it's coming, that kind of thing. And so they're unaware of what's going to happen here. So they have to give this nice little electric shock going on over here. Here's what it looked like. General procedure. Tool for studying obedience. Consists of ordering naive subject to administer electric shock to a victim. The shock simulated generator is 30 opportunities here. You have 30 times to shock somebody. 30. Ranging from 15 to 450. Okay. If you know anything about electricity, how many of you guys know anything about electricity? What's your common wattage or voltage?
A little bit.
The wattage is voltage with volts. That's what it does. Standard houses run on 110, 120. Your dryer is like a 220, if I remember correctly, if it's electric. Is it 110 or no? I think it's, I can't remember if it's 110 or 120. Is a really good level to stop your heart because it's about the same voltage it carries. So it happens all your muscles freeze, your heart stops, and you die. You can't let go either. So it's one of those things. If you start really getting it's right in the right bandwidth, you better hope someone's around you because you're not getting off of that thing. You're just going to cook.
Yeah, 110 could do it to you.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's 110 or 120. One of those is like
110
perfect.
can.
It might be 110 because
You ever
120 is like
grabbed
the
a
ground.
wire? Have you ever done that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
You
High
can
school
let
ag
go.
class. High school ag class taught me wiring. Electricity. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, a whole bunch of breakers getting thrown and fuses blown and some shocks involved. Yeah. I think it's 110 because it doesn't have ground. For some people, it's just at the right voltage that their muscles literally seize it. You can't let go. It's just, and that's why you see people do that. Just to hit that right band. That's less than 450. Okay. Subjects were 40 males between the ages of 20 and 50. Remember, we're thinking post-war, so it's going to deal heavily with males. Those responding to appeal believe they were participating in a study of memory and learning at Yale University. Whole bunch of ranges. Postal clerks, teachers, to engineers and laborers. 450. Of course, it's in the 60s. That's where how much they were paid for their participation. So small monetary thing to get them involved.
When was that study done?
61?
That's pretty good pay. For
60, yeah.
Make $1 an hour back then. That's pretty good.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Back whenever I started, I was making $5.85. Let's see. Personnel and local. Here was breakdown. Distribution of ages 29, 30, 50. Skilled, unskilled, sales, professional. Of course, those are not biased this way because those take time to move into. That's just, that one's kind of interesting. Population, maybe. Procedure. One naive subject and one victim, an accomplice, performed in each experiment. Pretext had to be devised with justified administration of electric shock by a naive subject, effectively accomplished by a cover story. So this is the cover story. Presumed relation between punishment and learning, subjects were told. We actually know very little about the effect of punishment on learning because almost no truly scientific studies have been made of human beings. For instance, we don't know how much punishment is best for learning. We don't know how much difference it makes as to who is giving the punishment, whether adults learn best from younger or older persons than themselves, or many things of that sort. So they start identifying some of the variability in here, which gets people's curiosities. So in this study, bringing together a number of adults of different occupations and ages, asked some of them to be teachers, some to be learners. We're going to find out the effects different people have on each other as teachers and learners. See the effect punishment will have in this situation. From asking one of you to be a teacher tonight, the other one to be a learner. Do either of you have a preference? And so they think everything's honky-dory. And no. Okay, you want the shock? You go right ahead. Okay. Sample shock. Each naive subject is given a sample shock on the generator. Shock is always 45 volts. Shock is applied to the wrist, wired in a generator. Convinces of the authenticity of the generator. So they got shocked too. Remember, it said 45. It started at what? Yeah. I think it was 15. It's not what they said. Yeah.
15.
Yeah. So
1.5.
you're getting 3 notches up. Right. So you're into it a little bit. Okay. So they did some testing. Okay. Subjects were then presented a second list and told the procedure is the same as the first. Okay. When you get to the bottom of the list, repeat over and over again. Continue giving shocks until the learner has learned all pairs correctly. So they had a test run to get them used to it, and then they ran the real experiment. Experiment instructions to the subject: start at 15 volts, increase the shock level 1 step each time, and the learner gives a wrong answer. So every time they get one wrong, give them a shock. Feedback. In all conditions, learner gives a predetermined set of responses based on a schedule of approximately 3 wrong answers to 1 correct, so 3 to 1. That one's actually Piaget and rats, if I remember correctly.
That's how to play. That's how you get people to keep playing. You keep a 3-1 ratio. Every party keeps them playing, whether you're a winner or a loser. Let's see here. In all conditions, there we go. In the present experimental condition, no vocal response or other sign of protest was heard until shock level 300. When it's learned, the learner pounds on the wall of the room, he's bound to the chair. So as soon as you get to 300, you start hearing the person showing signs of distress, right? And so experimenter has some prods that they can use. Please continue, please go on. The experiment requires you continue. It's absolutely essential. You have no other choice. You must go on. That's a verbal thing. You know you have a choice, right? Special prods. If they ask about permanent physical energy, shocks may be painful. There's no permanent tissue damage. Please go on. So just did not want to go on.
What is that? That's not 300 volts, is it?
Yes. That's how far they got before they even started objecting. They got one at 45. They
That's
probably
nuts.
didn't like it. Yeah. Twice that can, well, 3 times that will kill you.
I'm
Yeah.
telling them to go pound sand.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there.
Whether the learner likes it or not, you must go on until he's learned all 4 word pairs. So please go on. So that's if they keep happening. We'll just scroll on. Well, there's the line part right here. Interviews and de-hoax. Procedures were undertaken to ensure the subject would leave the laboratory in a state of well-being. Sure. This is one of the reasons why we have IRBs. And there you go. There's the breakdown right there. 0. This is where you start running into death. 0. Here you go. Intense shock. Extreme intensity shock. 5 here. I'm not going any higher. As soon as he gave a physical response, I quit. But they'll go the whole way to a physical response. From there, there's a few breaks. Dangerous, severe shock. Somebody finally hit their threshold personally. Almost everyone went to death. All for the words, it must go on, it must continue. You don't have a choice here, even though you've been told for how many times it's all voluntary. You even signed it was voluntary. And you killed them.
You think they'd tell them stuff like, "Oh, everybody else is doing it. Everybody else is."
They're doing it today.
You know?
Yeah, if they're doing it today, they'd use the social side a
Yeah.
little bit. But here, they didn't even need to do that. This is just the value of what's being learned here. It must go on. Please continue. It requires, otherwise you invalidate the whole study and the person's gone through it for nothing. And so they keep going until the person's dead. That right there is educational. The value of that knowledge cannot be understated. How it was gotten. That's pretty nasty. It's not as evil as Stanford prison experiment where I'm condoning violence towards people. That's different. Still pretty nasty, right? A common one that gets quoted is, what is it? Hypothermia, or treatments for hypothermia. Why? Because that came from more experiments on prisoners. That kind of thing. It's evil, but it's very useful. So we can't just let it go. That's the Milgram experiment. Next one. In terms of experimentation, right? This next one, so what I'm thinking of is crazy shit. I think that last one was bad. The Stanford prison experiment was bad. But
They
that was when
still do those studies. This is in the 60s and 70s, and they did this stuff. They still do that these days.
like there's frostbite testing. Notice that's a little kid. Yeah. Like now you know the value of knowledge.
Sound like a bunch of Nazis.
They were. This was Japanese and
Japanese.
yeah, this was World War II, if I remember correctly. Chinese, Japanese, Chinese, and Koreans. Japanese were the ones who were taking over, so the ones doing it. Book Break of Nanking, I think, is a book that's on this, and so you can see not just this specific, but that whole stuff. So you can read that if you're interested. Yeah, rapid rewarming, dousing with hot water, holding it over open fire, leaving it untreated, that kind of thing. Which way is the best way to handle it? I don't know. Let's find out. Right? Think that's bad. Human experiment designed by the CIA to develop procedures and identify drugs that can be used during interrogation to weaken and hurt individuals, force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. This is in the 1950s here.
CIA.
Yeah, government hidden experimentation. This is real. This stuff really happened. The things that they're using, LSD.
Hell, yeah.
Additional other methods were used: electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture. This is art, right?
I kind of wonder about that.
This isn't the only one like
CIA
this.
one.
Yeah.
Because, well, it's kind of personal, but when I was a kid, I used to get sick a lot. So they gave me some stuff that made me hallucinate. It might have been LSD.
Yeah,
Maybe they were experimenting on me. That's back in the 60s.
yeah. There's no telling. I mean, in terms of going back now, it's like there's no telling. And the stuff that they're doing is pretty wild.
Freaking out.
If I said, oh, here's another one.
Get like a free sample of medication from a doctor. It's literally just like medication that they're working on, and they're like, it's a trial. And they're like, here you go. This is good medication. And sometimes you'll get like the placebo, and sometimes you'll get the actual thing, but they don't tell you. They're like, hey, this will help with your heart disease.
Yeah, here's another one. The syphilis study. Yeah. So what it was is they picked poor rural Black males to study the effects of syphilis long term. So they went tested, found out they had syphilis. We have a cure for syphilis. We just denied it to them so that we could see what would happen. Who's going to die, because people die from it. Who's going to burn through it? Who's going to become sterile and who isn't? Right? I think that one's fun. Let's see if this one pulls up. Maximum.
So is there any
Pain.
way you could ever do a study like that? There really isn't, is there? I mean, not even the prisoners, because not even if they sign their consent. Not
You
even,
wouldn't want to do that kind of stuff. That stuff is
no, but I mean,
evil.
there's no way to justify that. I mean, not even if a person says, yeah, I'll do it. You know,
Right.
Kill me. I don't care.
Maximum pain experiments. That's this guy right here. Yeah. So he does the emails. The message are prompted by online reports of details explaining. Basically, what it was is the study they were doing is they were taking puppies and exposing just their
Oh.
faces to bees to see how many stings they could take, stuff like that. So it seemed what the maximum level for pain is, right? There is value to it. Is it evil? Maybe. Let's see, what's another one?
It's evil here.
Yeah, it's not
You
the,
know where they did
yeah.
those studies, don't you? Is in like Liberia or
Mhm.
Algeria or something
All
like
over
that,
the
where they don't like dogs.
Yeah.
So
They move those things all over. It's like when you start
it's
talking
okay.
about
It's perfectly acceptable
yeah.
over there.
That's the thing that we do is if we can't do it here, we'll do it somewhere else. Almost like viral and gene editing, gain of function research, but that's a different thing, right? But is it really? No, it isn't. It's the exact same thing. What are you doing? Anytime you enter in this area, you're entering into a danger.
Bless you.
So I got my nose is tickling. Ah, oh, it starts sneezing again. But yeah, every time you engage with this, it's going to be dangerous because even if you're not measuring stuff on your own, the ways it can be used can be dangerous. When you're measuring it on your own, you have the whole potential of everything that goes with the actual process of measuring. And then you have the whole balancing of what we're doing versus what it does. Right? Because those aren't the same thing. Those are all big, big issues associated with ethics. And we'll go back and we got 2 more minutes. Let's see if we can knock out some of the other stuff that they got in here a little bit. Ethical concerns. So here's when we talk about voluntary participation. So here's an interesting overlap you'll see across criminal justice and into the methodology a little bit. So for anything that's consensual in nature, it has to have 2 facets, right? It needs to be voluntary, right? If you're going to participate in something, it has to be voluntary. If it isn't, it's forced. That's no good. Right? Second, you have to understand what it is you're volunteering for. Problem, this thing. If you know exactly what I'm looking for, it changes. So you have that deception in there. So that's going to be a problem that you have to deal with. The next stage is whenever you have data and information, particularly concerning people, how do you handle it, right? Depending on how you collect it, will determine whether or not it's anonymous or confidential. Anonymous means there's no way to identify it. Confidential means I can identify. So here's the thing to think about. How many details about someone does someone need to be able to identify them? Sometimes it can be surprisingly few. If I know where you're at, I know your basic demographics like your age, your sex, your race, and maybe one other factor, depending on where you're at, I'll know exactly who you are. That's a scary thought. That's a super scary thought. It's sort of like, what do they do from here? Where you guys, at the end of the semester, you get feedback. There you go. Couldn't think of the term. Same thing. It's like ideally you want those to be anonymous to those receiving it. You don't want them to know who said what. Really, it's confidential. But every time you do that, I'm sure you're a little worried that someone, if you have something that's a real legitimate concern, there's some pause in whether or not you put it in there because how might it affect you. And it's like, the hell is that? How do we address that? I don't know. I always tell people, it's like, just be honest, say whatever it is. I like to learn. If I did something wrong, tell me. Hey, not everybody's like that. When it comes to this stuff, you'll have those who want to do things that are negative.
Very bad.
Techniques to do that. You're taking your names and you're encoding them with like maybe letters, numbers, things like that. Typically what I do is I'll take out personal identifiers and strip them entirely. If it doesn't matter, if I'm not tracking them over time, then it doesn't need to be in there in the first place. Just having the record is enough. Some you're tracking it over time or you're tying it into other things, you might need some special items. Like that. But we'll cut it out for there today, and then we'll pick up with this on Monday next week. No class Wednesday. We're traveling some. And so we'll catch you Monday. If you have any questions, let me know. And we'll continue moving forward with some of that project stuff and some of the stuff that you guys have. And I'll show you how this stuff works as we go. Cool. All righty. I'll catch y'all later.
Do we have class this Wednesday for the last class?
No. We won't have any classes this. We've got the Southwestern Association of Justice taking place. We leave out tomorrow, so no class Wednesday, but we'll meet again on Monday. Cool?
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good
Yeah,
day.
I don't really like Zoom that well, but
I like it for the convenience, but I'd rather have people in here. I like talking to people in person.
I